Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is James Makinson. Today we're going to be doing something that I haven't done before on my channel. Instead of just giving you a normal recipe or teaching you how to cook, we're going to be recreating one of Joshua Weissman's recipes. And this is a recent recipe that he just did on his channel as well. I'll leave the link down below if you want to check his video out, guys. But what we're going to be making is a Big Mac cheeseburger. That's it, basically. So I agree with him on this, is that normally when you go to McDonald's and you get a Big Mac and you see that picture, or even when you go to Burger King and you see that picture of the Whopper, how nice it is, how big it is, and then you actually get the real thing and there's nothing in the burger. It's just bread and maybe a little bit of meat and a pickle or two and a little bit of cheese if you pay a little extra. And yeah, it's pretty much like he has said in this video, and I agree with him, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. It's very disappointing when you pay that much and you get that for actually what you pay for. So for the amount of money that it costs. So anyway, we're going to be making something a lot better than that today. And before we get going today, guys, be sure to like the video down below, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and let's start. So we're gonna be making our own burger buns today, like he does as well. And the first thing that we're gonna make is the Tang Zong, which is super simple and easy. All you're gonna do is put about 2 tablespoons of flour with 2 tablespoons of water and 1/4 of a cup of milk, and we're just going to heat this over a little saucepan until it starts to reduce, which will be in under a minute, and then until it thickens. You're just gonna take that off the heat and put that into another little dish and leave that off to the side. And now we're gonna work on making the dough. So to start the yeast off for the dough, first we're gonna get about 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons or 150 milliliters of water, and then 1/2 cup or 125 milliliters of milk. Put this in a little pan and either put this in the microwave or heat this up to around about 95 Fahrenheit. You just want this a little warm or lukewarm. You don't want this too hot, otherwise you're going to damage the yeast. The yeast is going to, well, die, and it's not gonna work. So then we're just going to add 1.5 tablespoons of granulated sugar, or about 21 grams. And instead of using instant yeast like Joshua uses, it's more difficult for me to find this, and I only have fresh yeast at the grocery store unless I really want to go look for it, and I don't have the time to really go look for yeast all day. So I'm gonna be using about 30 grams of fresh yeast for this recipe. And the amounts vary a little bit. For dry to fresh yeast, I think is double the amount of fresh per dry yeast. Or so if you have 1 teaspoon of dry yeast, you add 2 teaspoons of fresh yeast, and so on and so on. And then instant yeast, I think, is even a little more. So I'm gonna add about 30 grams. So add the yeast to the little mixture and let the yeast do its work. Just leave it, mix it in well, and then just leave it off to the side. And then we're gonna measure out the rest of our ingredients. We're gonna be using about 3.5 cups of bread flour. This is heavy flour, bread flour. This has more gluten in it, not all-purpose flour, okay? We're gonna add 2 teaspoons of fine table salt, and we're going to mix this in. Today I'm gonna be mixing everything by hand instead of mixing it in a machine. If you have a machine, use the machine. And then I'm slowly going to pour in our little slurry that we have with our yeast, sugar, and milk. Mix this and incorporate everything for several minutes. And if you're doing this by hand, a little longer. It's good exercise. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to add 1 egg yolk and 1 whole egg. We're going to mix this well. And then I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter at room temperature. Okay, it's softened. You're going to incorporate this. Then I'm going to take this out of the bowl, and I'm going to work this into more or less a uniform shape and put this back into the bowl, and then let this sit for about an hour or until it doubles in size. So I'm gonna put a little bit of clear film on top and cover it and put it in a nice dark warm place and let it grow or double in size. If the dough is a little too wet, you can add a little more flour, or when you're handling it, you can actually do a little, here's a little trick, you can put a little bit of butter on your hands. That way it won't stick to your finger so much. And then after it doubles in size, I'm just going to remove the film, I'm going to punch it down, and then I'm going to take it out and I'm going to break it up into smaller sections, and I'm going to roll little burger buns. And more or less the method that I'm showing you right now, you're just gonna leave it on the table and you're gonna go around in circles. If it's a little too wet, you can add a little more flour, but you shouldn't have to. Now I'm gonna put some parchment paper on my baking trays. I'm gonna preheat the oven and I'm going to space the buns. Make sure that you have enough space between them because they will rise. Let them sit for another 30 minutes or so, and then you're gonna egg wash them, put a few sesame seeds on top, and after all that's finished, we're going to pop them in the oven, either at 375 or at about 180 centigrade with the fan. So if you have a convection oven, use it because you'll get a much better, well, much more consistent browning on top. And you're gonna cook this for about 15 to 17 minutes or until they're golden brown, and it's a very good recipe. I haven't tried this recipe before of his, and today was the first time, and they turned out very nice. So after we are all finished with the bread, now we're going to work on the sauce. Also guys, if you don't know how to cut Bernoise, or if you want to learn how to cut better, I made a video not too long ago, which I will leave a link in the description down below, as well as here, if you want to check that video out to improve your cutting. Now for the burger sauce, I'm going to modify a little bit, just because I don't have all the same ingredients. I am going to use about half a cup of mayonnaise and 3 tablespoons of ketchup. Now for the mustard, I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, or you can use yellow mustard if you want, it's totally optional. Then I'm gonna add my onions to the bowl, my pickles as well that I grated, and 1 clove of garlic over a microplane. Now the only thing that I didn't add was onion powder, just because I don't use a lot of these ingredients in my house. I use more fresh ingredients, but it's totally optional. We're gonna add 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar or sherry vinegar, any vinegar will work, and then a little bit of salt and pepper. Mix this in, and you should have a very nice little burger sauce. All right, now I'm gonna julienne a few little onion slices as well. You can cut them in rings if you want. And I'm also going to cut some pickles to layer on, just because I like pickles on my burgers. Now for the iceberg lettuce, you can either cut in half, or you can take a few leaves off, fold them, and then just cut them thinly lengthways, which will give you nice long thin strips of iceberg lettuce. Now here's the thing, is that here beef is not as common as pork, and it's a little more expensive as well. So today, instead of using all beef patties, I'm going with 50-50 from the butcher. I have half beef and half pork. Not only that, but the pork has a lot of fat in it, so it'll add a little more flavor. I'm going to season the ground meat heavily with salt and pepper, and I'm going to mix it. Now if you want a good recipe on making, say, either meatballs or meatloaf, I have those videos on my channel for you guys to check out, and I'll leave the links down below if you want as well, because I have a few secrets on getting a perfect little meatball and, well, a perfect meatloaf as well. So now get the pan hot, oil in the pan, roll your patties out. You can squish them in the pan if you want, or you can pre-flatten them so you know that they're going to be bigger than the burger bun. And they will shrink a little bit after you cook them. So, in the pan, sear both sides, hot pan, and then cook the burger to however you want it. However, technically, because it's ground meat, you should cook it all the way through, just so you don't have any, well, salmonella, etc., etc. Now it's time to mount the burger. Well, actually, sorry, now we have to cut the buns, and then we can mount. So for the buns, I'm just going to take 1 bun, cut it in half, and I'm gonna take the other bun, because we're making a tower here. And just like Joshua does in his video, you're going to cut off the end, and then cut it in half, and then you have your centerpiece. I'm going to be using some Gouda cheese today instead of American cheddar, and I'm gonna be using double the amount of cheese because I really like cheese on my burgers. I'm gonna give that a little bit of a melt in the broiler. After that's out, I'm going to add my iceberg lettuce. I'm gonna add a few onions. I'm going to add a little bit of the sauce. Then I'm going to put the patty on top, and I'm going to do the same thing with the second layer. A little bit of iceberg lettuce, a few onions, the patty, as well as more sauce, and of course pickles as well. And then a little more sauce on top of the patty, and voila, there you go. So guys, I have to admit that this is what a Big Mac should be, especially when you go to McDonald's and you see, well, what they show you on the photos and everything. It's like this. This is what it should look like, not something like this, like Joshua said in his video as well. So I have to admit that this is a very, very good, well, Joshua actually made a Big Mac. He did a very good job on it. It's a very, very tasty burger. It's a little hard to eat because it's so big, and well, this is what, like I said, a Big Mac should be. So with a knife or fork, it's a lot easier. But the only thing that I would change, the only thing, just personal preference, is for me, I would add a nice sharp cheddar. Today I use Gouda, that's fine, but I would add a nice sharp cheddar to this and maybe some caramelized onions, and that's it. But anyway, it's delicious. So guys, this is the first time that we've recreated an actual recipe 100%. Well, I changed a few little things, but almost 100%. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you make this, more importantly, I hope you enjoy the recipe as well, because it's not mine, it's Joshua Weissman's. So be sure to head over to his channel. I'll leave the link down below for his video if you want to see his video as well. And tell him I said hi, and well, that's it. So be sure to check out the rest of my videos that that I will be making more of as well every week, live videos, etc, etc. And be sure to hit that like button and subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. It'll help my channel out greatly. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Take care.